I'm pleased to be joined by Amy Beth and Emma. Amy Beth from University of Glasgow and Emma from Assemble Events. I will pass over to them in a moment so that they can introduce themselves. First of all, I'm Dan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Forum, and we've created technology for universities and schools to connect better with their alumni through events like these, like virtual events or in-person events, through registration and things like that, as well as fundraising. So we're very happy that we actually just launched a fundraiser for Sussex last week, which is for their hardship fund. So it's been really, really cool to kind of see that all come together. About me, I guess a little bit. I used to work at the University of Glasgow. Prior to this, I worked for the organizing committee for the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics. So very excited to have kind of a couple other event planners and managers on the webinar today. So before we properly kick off, I'm going to pass it over to Emma to introduce herself, and then Emma, if you can pass it to Amy Beth.
Of course, thank you, and it's lovely to be here today, so thank you for the invitation. I'm Emma. I'm the founder and director of Assemble Events. I've pretty much always been in events, and I've worked my way through various different roles. I was previously at Case and Times Higher Education, and I've very much focused in on education over the last sort of 12, 13, 14 years. It just keeps growing. But I work with a range of different universities in the UK and also sort of organisations that work within the education space. Running all things events, strategy, management, whatever people need. But looking forward to talking about events today. Over to Amy Beth.
Thanks, Emma. I'm Amy Beth, and I have been at the University of Glasgow for the last 8 years. I was their event manager until about a month ago. I'm now the alumni manager. But like Emma, my career has been spent in events. So prior to working for the University of Glasgow, I was with Scotland's National Conservatoire, and then prior to that, working for a private events company. So a great broad range of experience in terms of events, but over the period of my career, focusing a lot on fundraising, alumni engagement, and music and education. So yeah, excited to chat today.
Great, thanks, guys. I will say that we've got the event chat there on the right-hand side of your screen. So anyone who wants to just drop a question in there, I will try and work it into the conversation that we're having today. This is going to take about 45 minutes, and then afterwards, for those of you that want to stay with us, you can come to the breakout room and have a chat with us. You can turn your camera on and say hello. Is anyone there? If you want to say hello in the chat, you can. I can see there's some people joining us live, but Emma, thank you. Say hello. There's Emma's here. Okay, so let's dive into the first topic. Something that really was quite interesting when we were having our discussions before the planning this webinar was about the accidental event manager, and you guys were mentioning that, and I know it was one of the some of the themes that came out of the Case Roundtable that you both hosted in Manchester. So I'm wondering if Amy, you could probably kind of give us a bit of an idea of what is an accidental event manager.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, I think I'm to blame for the term accidental event manager, actually. But really, what I'm referring to there is that there are so many people, as Emma and I have both said, this is what we do. It's what we've kind of chosen as part of our career, and it's predominantly, been the focus of our professional lives. But actually, for so many people that are working to deliver events, particularly across the university sector, they may have fallen into it by accident, because quite often it's the additional thing that needs to be done. And then once somebody discovers that you can do it, you will be doing it. And so in some instances, and obviously I've always been lucky enough to find roles that have focused solely on event delivery. And that's great. But even when in those roles, there were so many events happening across my organisation that I simply couldn't service because I couldn't do everything. And so I think a lot of people that are working across our sectors have fallen into it by accident. And the challenge that comes with that is that you maybe don't always know why you're making some of the decisions that you're making. You maybe are feeling under pressure to deliver in addition to something else that you're already doing. And you're doing a job that has competing priorities whilst you yourself have competing priorities. So, so much of my experience of trying to support colleagues in that space has been around the fact that they've fallen into the role. And when somebody does fall into the role, that tells you they're probably surrounded by others that perhaps don't understand the scope of what the job actually is. And I've had the opposite experience. I've worked with people that have really valued so much the specialism that they've invested in roles in this area, but that's not most people's experience.
Emma, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Amy Beth. Both of us sort of set out for a role and a career in events, and our way has been, we've been coached, mentored, trained, attended, volunteered. We've done so many things that have helped us on our way to get us where we are today. And I feel for those that do fall into this accidental role that they might not have a playbook, or they might not have the support of a team behind them or a manager that might be able to guide them in a certain way. And I think that can be really tricky because events are all about people and expectation management and sort of meeting those expectations and the audience. There's a lot to juggle within there. So not having that sort of foundation to build on and having this sort of dropped on your lap can often be a challenging one. But I think it can be remedied with certain steps, which I hope we talk about today.
Yeah, great. I mean, and it does seem that there are some people joining us. We've had a couple comments on the chat, so which is really nice. So keep them coming, guys. Keep if any questions that come up as well. I will premise this as well. If you hear some singing in the background, I don't know if you can hear it or not. I'm currently in a classroom in a school called Sussex House in London, and there's some wonderful prep school boys outside the classroom singing. So if you hear some stuff in the background, that's what it is. It's a very nice environment to be in, to be honest. Okay, so let's look at the role of those event managers then. If let's take the scenario that yes, somebody is now being required to create an event. If we put that kind of your professional event hat on, but what would you tell somebody that is being asked to do an event that doesn't necessarily have the experience? What does that role entail? And I'll go to Emma for this. Why not?
Who's diving in first? If I was approaching this, I would really start with the why. Like, why are you doing this event? What do you want to achieve? Do you need to run an event? Like, in all honesty, not everything needs to be an event. And that needs to be considered around, do you have the right budget? Do you have enough resource to get it done? Is the right amount of time in order that it takes alongside your other responsibilities as well? So I'd really think about what are you trying to achieve as a starting place and really map that out so everyone's clear about what direction of travel you're going in. The next piece would be your audience and really thinking about, does this align to our audience? Does our audience want this? Because if the two things don't align, it's going to be a bit tricky further down the line once you've put all the planning in place and unpicking that. That would be where I would start. Amy Beth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whilst you're doing that, you need to be thinking in your head, if all signs are showing that we are going to be delivering something, who's my team? Because if it's fallen to you, you probably don't have one, which means you have to assemble together all the people that are going to support you in your organisation. And that can be, it could be colleagues that have a role to play. It could also be something that Emma mentioned earlier was, throughout our careers, we've had a lot of mentoring and support. It could also just be someone that acts as a mentor for you that you can go to when you're dealing with something a little tricky, because so much of it will be dealing with bringing people together, encouraging collaboration and making sure that works really well. So you should also be trying to think, okay, if this is the route that I'm going to be going down, I'm going to be responsible for the delivery of this, who can help me? And there'll be some practical help, but it's always, I think, really good to keep in mind that there might just need to be someone that for you is a great sounding board and a great source of advice.
Yeah.
What type of person is a successful event manager? Like, if you could describe somebody's personality that can successfully deliver events.
I think you've got to be quite people-centric, in all honesty,
Right.
and constantly thinking about everyone's perspective, views, expectations. I think that being aligned to the audience, to your stakeholders, whether that's internal colleagues, senior leadership, whether that's donors, future students, you've constantly got to be thinking about, well, what's their expectation? What experience are they wanting? And if you can map back from that and sort of have that sort of vision and alignment, I think that sort of sets you on your track. Of course, there's practical skills about having project management and being a good communicator and working across a bajillion spreadsheets and juggling those kind of things. But I think it really does come down to people and teamwork, because I don't know any successful events that run with one person. They're full of teams with different roles and responsibilities. They'll dip in and out at different points. You might have those that are there in the planning stages with you, thinking about different elements that you might not have within your toolkit or expertise, or they might be people that join you on the day and help welcome people and register people. But without those different groups of colleagues or volunteers, whoever those people are, you're not going to get there. And I think back to the question, it's all about people, working with people and communicating and building those relationships to get it right.
AB?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being an influencer is a really important element to that. And I think sometimes people think that being an influencer comes alongside the grade that you have in your organization. And I don't think that's the case. I think it does make it easier, absolutely. But, you know, I've had great teams at all different levels and grades of an organization who have been excellent influencers, because it's really just about helping somebody to buy into the idea and bringing them along with you on the journey. And again, that comes back to being people-centric. If you understand how to work well with people, and you can understand what somebody else is looking to get from the situation as you go into it, then you can really do that regardless of your level. I think sometimes that message gets missed a little, in people thinking that to be an influencer, you have to be a very serious in an organization. I don't think that's always the case.
Let's dive into that a little bit more, because it kind of leads me on to my next question about the different roles and responsibilities, or the different kind of the must-haves for a successful event. And I know from my background doing Olympics and Commonwealth Games and all those kind of things, there are very defined specific functional areas. For example, there'd be transport, or there'd be spectator services, or there'd be ticketing, or there'd be, you know, the people within sports, logistics, and on and on and on and on. And I don't think that that's relevant to the discussion we're having. So if we can look at it from the context of the type of events someone within a charity or a university or school is running, what are those kind of core roles that need to be filled by actual individuals?
Yeah. Do you want to bat them back and forth, AB? I can start.
Yeah, you
Fine.
Yeah.
You guys decide.
Okay.
Is it easier if I just start calling your name and be like, okay, you speak? I can do that from now on.
Yeah.
Emma Darwin, could you please explain some of the roles, the must-have roles? Thank you.
Okay, so for starters is sort of like that sort of foundation level of sort of event planning. So, you know, really thinking about, you know, the objectives, why you're doing, setting up a framework around the project, you know, budget, resource available, project plan, thinking about timing, setting that sort of element that will run along your planning. The next piece that I would probably think about next is sort of the audience, along how that fits within that. You know, what's their timescales? How do they fit into that piece? So within that, they often have different skill sets. And I think this is it. Quite often when you're running an event, you're expected to be the technical whiz to the artist, to the marketeer, to the caterer, to moving the furniture and also cleaning at the same time. So I think it's about assembling that team of different expertise. But I think one of the core pillars, which runs alongside event planning, coming back to your question, is this marketing comms attendee piece, this guest piece, and thinking about their experience, what's their journey throughout the planning stages that keeps them engaged and getting them to log on or join you on campus, through to their experience on site, and that after experience as well, that post-event piece about follow-up, because it's all in the follow-up wherever you sit within the institution, whatever events you're doing, student recruitment all the way through to philanthropy and alumni relations. It's all about the follow-up. Do you want to pick another one, AB?
Yeah, no, I think there's just picking up on some of what Emma's already said around kind of assembling the right team. When you know what your audience needs, that helps you determine the team that you want to pull in to help support those needs. But I do think that there is also, depending on what your budget scenario is, you know, as I mentioned previously, I have been the events manager at the University of Glasgow. It was my sole role to run those kinds of events. I've actually brought Emma in to support us on some of the work that we've done. So I think you could also look outside your organisation if budget allows, and it's not always a budget question. Sometimes there will be opportunities to partner with others to help deliver some of that. So as well as assembling who's within your organisation, you know, for us, it's been really helpful to get a more sectoral wide perspective, and that's where we've worked closely with Emma. So I think you're working out who are the best people to help support me in delivering this? How do we pull all these people together? And I also think being aware when you're doing that of what they're going to need and how that's going to work for them, because particularly when you're working in a university environment and indeed in a small charity sector environment, there's usually one of many people. So you're dealing with something that's additional in people's plate. So it's good to get them in early and have them buy into the plan and the programme so that you can build that team, but make sure that you're using people at the right time in the process. So there isn't any point in time where they're involved that they don't need to be involved. So I think it's a carefully curated piece. And sometimes working with somebody external can help you kind of set your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I think like how do you go about that then from the very beginning? So you know you want to you've gone through the steps, right? You know that there needs to be an event. You know who the audience is. You know what the objective is. All that kind of stuff. How do you where do you start? Are you kind of emailing a bunch of people that you think would want to be involved in supporting? Are you building do you have a volunteer pool of individuals in terms of that, and how do you look at when to bring them in throughout the process? And even if you want to use an example of an event that maybe the two of you have worked on, and kind of explain that process, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
AB, do you want to take that one?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I think at the start of that, for me, I'm always starting with what does the budget look like, because ultimately that determines what capacity I have to either bring somebody external in to buy in external services that could be, design, it could be some additional marketing support, it's the audio visual on the day of the event, it's the catering, it's all of these parts that you're building your budget for. And also your budget should always be aligned to your timeframes, because you're going to spend different pots of money at different points in time. And also depending on at what point one part reaches a kind of point of contract or conclusion, you could potentially free up money for another part. So, I think there's a lot of immediate alignment to be done with that. And then when I look at building the team of people that I need around me, I also then have a look at, well, who can I work with in-house, particularly if we're doing something that's a bit tighter on budget, that might allow me to free up a bit of budget to spend a bit more in this area, whether it's, audiovisual support, whether it's looking at what we're doing in terms of hybrid, which is, in itself has to be treated with some caution. So it really a good example for me of that, of where we've worked on things would be some of our student recruitment events, where we've brought in Emma's support to look at the kind of broad thinking around how we might work together and how we might be able to launch some hybrid elements of our student recruitment events. And that was really where our working relationship started. And in that, it's about building the people in your organisation that bring the expertise that also helps you inform the person that you're going to work with. And in some instances, Emma very graciously has said, listen, guys, you've got this, you can go it alone. But actually just having that, I talk about, finding someone that you can bounce your ideas off. We've very much been able to be that person for each other in a lot of ways. And so you'd be able to then go through and work out, well, actually, you've got this already in-house and you can use it. This is already working really well from another event, and you can draw that into your plan. And that comes right down to some of the, the real basics around things like your catering, for example, looking at, is it sustainable catering? Can you work? Have you got sustainability colleagues that are working in this space that can help, talk about the kind of things that you're using? There's real ways to be creative and not entirely centered on budget, work out what you can do at an event that brings in the strengths of your whole organisation. But it does take some time to do that.
Mm. Emma, did you want to add anything to what AB said?
No, I think the big thing for me is it just keeps coming back to people, and like AB says, like coming up with that plan and being realistic what you can do with that money, and not overstretching. It might be something that you're trying to establish. Well, think about it in stages. What would you like to achieve in year 1 versus what would you like to achieve in year 2? And start to evolve the event. Don't go all in at the beginning and set yourself up for things that A, you might not know that your audience want, but B, you might not be able to deliver so well. So sort of pare it back and be kind to yourself and think about, well, what can we achieve really well in year 1? And then what could we maybe introduce in year 2? And sort of taking a bit of a pragmatic view of it. Because I think there is a danger with events that we all get very excited and we think, yes, this is a great idea and we're all in. And then delivery bites and there's no hiding. It's that first impression. It's that event. You're going to have one shot at it. So just really think about that. And I think the other thing that needs to knit around all of this is culture and having a supportive environment around it when you're developing events. I think that there's a lot of pressure when it comes to delivering events. There is a deadline. There's no sort of flex in that whatsoever when it comes to the day. And I think it's about having that nice team environment. And I've been so lucky to work with so many different university teams, but each and every time it's a team effort, and we've got people from across the institution that come to lend their hand, whether that's on the run up to it or on the day. And I think it's about having that culture of people getting behind the events and sort of supporting them, and that they're not just owned by a particular team, because they are a lot of responsibility. And I think that they can be enjoyable as well. That's the big thing. You're getting in front of your communities and your stakeholders. So they're nice for other people to get involved in. So sort of sharing that load and getting more sort of, what am I looking for? Support, I think, and just sort of having your back when you're delivering them. I think that's really important for longevity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take another step even further backwards a little bit and say, okay, so somebody's been told they have to run an event, and they're sitting there and they've got a blank piece of paper in front of them. They haven't really run events on a professional area level. They've just been told that they need to do it. What would your advice be for them if they're sitting there and they're looking at kind of those actual planning stages? And I know, Amy Beth, you've talked about the budget, and I think that's a really good way of being like, okay, how much money do we have to spend? But what are the types of kind of core things that they're going to need to spend that budget on, and kind of what should they do from square one? Yeah. Emma, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we can do maybe a double act where I miss bits out. So I think if you've got a clearly defined budget, and you've got a clearly defined deadline that this needs to happen by the end of the academic year, for argument's sake, you can then start looking at it and think, right, that's 2 months away, that's next week, that's 12 months away. And you can start to think about how much time you've got to put behind about that. And I think it's thinking about, what does your audience want? what can you realistically deliver, and what's the outcome of that? What's the format is appropriate? Is it a reception? Is it an open house? Is it a festival? Is it a ball? Like you can work that out using your budget. I would also, every university is different, but many have sort of individual sort of teams, catering, conferencing teams that will be able to advise what rates are, whether it's catering, AV, whether you have to pay a fee or not pay a fee for space, or maybe that actually there's restrictions around space at certain times of the year. They might be able to also help sort of narrow down what you're looking at by having a very pragmatic view of it as well, to say, actually, we've only got 1 week free in June if you want to run it by the end of the academic year. So I think sort of working with that sort of internal group of stakeholders is really important to get their different perspectives while you're forming your plan. What would you say, AB? What have I missed out?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, and probably we sort of slightly gloss over it because it's second nature to us, is to sit down with that blank piece of paper and say to yourself, okay, I've turned up at this event. I'm someone that's registered. I'm coming along. And what happened 7 days before? What did I get that let me know what I was coming to? What happened 4 weeks before? What happened 6 weeks before? What happened 12 weeks before? So look at it from the perspective of the person that's coming along to your event. What things need to be put in place in order to make sure that at the point in time that they turn up with their registration, you have met all of that. And it also helps you really plan where you need other people to come in. So writing a project plan that literally covers everything, like, have I got the right venues? Do I have the time to source the right venues for this? All of that also informs if the time frame you've been given is actually workable. You know, when do I have to confirm my catering numbers can help you decide whether or not, depending on whether you've got a free event or you're charging a fee or a nominal fee, at what point in time will you have to have met those registrations to be able to make those payments for that catering and make sure that you've signed up enough people for the contract you've got in terms of your catering? If you're booking speaker hotels and all these other little smaller details, what's the contract on my speaker hotels? When can I release those without having to make payment for them? You know, these are all the different elements that come into it that really helps to work your plan backwards in date, in weeks, and say, so on this week, these are the things I want to have confirmed. On this week, this is what I want to have picked up. How are you registering your guests? You know, what system are you using, and what do you need that system to talk to? So for example, for us, we need to be able to talk to Razor's Edge. And so, you know, we've been chatting to Dan at Forum about how we can integrate event registrations with our CRM. At the moment, we've been doing that in a manual way. So again, that also means, well, I have to build in more time if I am having to do it in a manual way. Some people might not have to be talking to Razor's Edge, but if you're not talking to Razor's Edge, have you spoken to your finance team? Can you actually take payments if you need to? So it's all of these little bits that really just come from working out all the steps that somebody will take to register, come to your event, and what they'll experience when they're there will help you go, oh, actually, hang on a minute, I haven't booked that. Oh, hang on a minute, I'm going to need that. And look at examples of other events and think of things that you've been to. What worked really well? What was a good experience? These are things that become really second nature to us because it's what you do. But it comes back to that being people-centric part of the scenario.
Yeah, I have a hard time going to events without not critique, but friendly critiquing, but saying, oh yeah, no, that was actually really good, or that was it. But what I also found was quite useful alongside that timeline is to also divide things into relevant stakeholders. So like you've got your attendees, you've got your VIP attendees, then you've got your speakers, you've got your sponsors, you've got kind of those elements of stakeholders that all need their own type of communication leading up to it. And I think very quickly it's a lot different for each one. For example, a speaker would need like some prep or would need, you'd have to have a discussion with them about, okay, this is the theme of the event, this is what we're trying to do. I mean, it could just be like the principle and then they've they can figure it out. But I think, for people that are, maybe hosting like a mini 1-day conference, or they're holding a reception, that they have someone there speaking about certain elements, kind of the run up to that. It's nice to have those stakeholders listed. Would you guys agree with me on that, or is that too in depth?
I would. I don't think you can ever underestimate the importance of briefings, rehearsals, trainings, notes, email updates. I think it's so vital, particularly for an event that's sort of content focused, and that you're going to be inviting speakers. They might not have met each other for the first time. They might not be familiar with the technology that you're using, or it might be on campus and it's in person. But the best, when your event is hung on that content, and them coming to your audience are coming to experience that, having your speakers meet prior, whether that's on a call or whether that's at a breakfast before or whatever it is, makes for a better conversation, which then in turn enhances the experience of your audience, but also probably your speakers, because you're inviting them because they're they're prominent in a particular area, or they might have certain prestige or a link with the institution. You want them to have a good experience, and you want them to say yes again. Likely they're doing this in a voluntary capacity. So it's also putting your sort of stewardship hat on as well, to think, gosh, sure that when they come on campus that they're greeted and they know where they're going and they can get a cup of coffee before they start, and all those kind of fun things. So I think I completely agree in terms of what you're saying about mapping out those different stakeholders. And if you've got a big enough team, maybe you divide that up so you're all focused on one. Hybrid adds an extra element because you're dividing your audience down the middle again. But yeah, definitely keep it in mind.
So we've got a question from Ana Rosa. And I think it kind of leads into, so thank you for these questions, because it leads into some of the things about the sector, about the education sector, and some of the challenges that you feel that we're facing. So Ana Rosa says, can you speak about kind of managing expectations from leadership and other teams of what an event can and can't deliver? And then the other bit is, as well, as like, what do you find most challenging about organizing events? And I'll ask her third question at some point, maybe closer to the end. But yeah, can you speak to that? So maybe managing expectations, but maybe tie it into some of the sector challenges that you guys are seeing out there. Amy Beth.
Yeah, good. In terms of the managing expectations, I think regardless of whether or not there are challenges in the sector, you're always doing that. In fact, I'd say it's a huge part of the job. And I think the best way to do that, in my experience, has been to try and understand where people have a shared vision. And inevitably, even when things may be described slightly differently, the reality is you can tick a lot of boxes with, some very careful programming across your schedule on the day of an event, to try and meet multiple objectives. And so quite often what will seem on the surface like somebody that perhaps have competing priorities, or they're perhaps looking for different things out of the event, and you would immediately think, oh, I'm going to have to manage someone's expectations here. Actually, one of the great things with working particularly with academics is that you can bring everybody together and say, how can we achieve this? And actually, quite often, it makes for some of the best debate and discussions across your panels. And so I think just being open to doing what you can to help everybody achieve part of what they want to, sometimes that's helping them reframe that in a different way. And I think that's a real key element to a really strong events professional, and also, really strong administrative support across our organisations comes from helping people to reframe what it is that they're looking for. It doesn't always have to be a yes or a no. Sometimes it can just be about helping repurpose things, helping rework things to get the best kind of opportunity. And I also think, again, you can look across your organisation and see we do so much activity. Where can we partner with something that's already happening? Do we have to create something new? Can we use something existing? Can we rebadge it? Can we repurpose it? Can we refresh it? So actually, it's not always about creating a new event or creating new content. Sometimes it's just about, looking at the best of what we have as our organisation and bringing that together to help deliver on those sorts of wider goals. So yeah, Emma, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I completely agree. I'm a big advocate for building out and repurposing events and making sure that they're, you can really sweat them down to get as much value as possible from them. When costs are going higher, people are busier, it's really challenging. So working in that way can really sort of help, help be smart about what your budget looks like and what you can get from the most for each year, but also with your time as well. This might be part of your role, it might be your full role running events, and I think working in that manner is really helpful in that sense. And I think in terms of like managing expectations, I think it is back to AB's point about shared vision, like why are we doing this, and sort of trying to sort of bring everyone along with you. And it does come back to people and having those relationships and having honest conversations. It seems quite basic what I'm saying, but it really is important to have those conversations and sort of be able to map it out together and make sure that there is that buy-in. I appreciate things change and the landscape does change, but quite often people will know what are the non-negotiables in an event. And if you can all identify those at the beginning, it's really helpful.
And to follow up on that, the most challenging element of organizing an event from you personally?
From me personally, I suppose there's always that element of the unknown, and it's never going to go away. I think it's probably the most challenging and then also the most satisfying part of the thing when you get a curveball and you manage to sort of bat it away and sort it out. But I think you've always got this level of uncertainty when you're running events, that inevitably someone's train will be late or someone is sick or there is a power cut, and it's just about how you manage those situations when they arise. And so I definitely can find that challenging in the moment, but I definitely also find it incredibly rewarding when we all think on our feet as a team to come up with a plan and a solution to keep it going in the best way possible. So it's kind of a bit of a fine line that I'm walking.
Yeah.
I do, not everything always goes to plan. You can plan as much as you want, but it will change on the day, without a doubt. And sort of.
And Amy? Oh, sorry, keep going, Emma.
No, that's it. I'm done.
And Amy?
So actually I think it aligns itself nicely to managing expectations, and it's really just around we as a sector, we're having to do more in each event, and so the core of doing well in this gig is making sure that you know what you're doing and who it's for, but more than ever we're having multiple audiences. So there's a real fine line that you walk in terms of maintaining the focus and getting making sure that your message is really a worthwhile one, and it's one that people actually do need to hear from you and not just what you want to say. But also that you do that in a way that can reach multiple audiences without losing its focus. And that is, you weave in and out of that at various points of time in any event planning process. Sometimes you think, we've got this nailed. This is really, really good, really focused. And then another opportunity comes up and you go, oh, we could include this, but it could broaden our focus. So I think the biggest challenge is just like riding out the time that you're planning and taking as much opportunity as you can, doing everything you can to broaden the reputational value for your organisation, but still maintaining a focus that means that people actually know what they're getting when they come to your event, and they know when they leave what that looks like. Because as Emma mentioned earlier, follow-up's so important, and it's hard to follow up on something when you've really broadened out the scope. So yeah, definitely, I think we'd call that the herding bit, the kind of keeping it together bit.
Yeah. I think for my time in events, the most challenging elements were or our kind of communication during the day, and also defined roles and responsibilities. I found like if we could nail that, if we knew what everyone was actually doing on the day and how to get in contact with them, when the inevitable happens in terms of an event, a curveball, you would know the phone number of the person that you needed to call, and you know that they knew that this is what their role entails. And I found that it was a difficult thing to get my head around, because my initial thought was like, oh, reactive, I will fix it. I will just drop what I'm doing right now. And then you ended up just doing like half bits of everything, as opposed to being like, okay, who from my small team of volunteers, can be repurposed or it falls within their role. I always found that a challenging thing to do. So that's the personality of an event manager is you do want to be involved, you want to be in the thick of it, but delegating is so important. Okay, so we've got just a few minutes left. If there's any other questions, guys, maybe what we could do is we can answer them in the breakout room in a couple minutes. But I would like to end with some key takeaways, some top tips for organizing an event on a small budget, or just some of the key takeaways that you would like to deliver to people listening or watching this that have been asked to be kind of falling into that accidental event manager role. Emma, can we start with you? Do you have a couple tips for people?
Okay. Tip number one, just start with the audience. Really think about what they want aligned next to, in parallel, what you're trying to achieve. Try and find that overlap, as it will make your life so much better further down the line. Otherwise, you're going to be delivering an event that doesn't have as much punch as it could do. I think the other piece that I would say, there's so many things that I would say. The other piece that I would say is just be kind to yourself. Like with events, there's a lot going on. You're often being pursued by multiple people for questions, which can range from how, where can I get this, to what time do I need to arrive? And you've probably already given them the information. So I think, just take a step back sometimes, don't be afraid to ask for help. Find that sort of core team that will support you, whether it's a mentor, manager, other colleagues, find your sort of groove with a team, because events aren't done on their own. You do need more than one person. So I just encourage you to sort of like not bottle it all up, just get out there, drag some colleagues along with you to help you, and just be kind to yourself, because they can be quite pressurized at points, shall we say. Those would be my two things, I think, if I did summarize that in two ways.
And AB?
Yeah, just again, picking up on be kind to yourself. Be nice to the people that are working with you.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of there's a lot of people that will be doing it in addition to what they're already doing. And particularly when you're working in a higher education environment where really the core business is learning and teaching, you're going to be asking people to do things that go out with the scope of what they do. And particularly, you're going to be asking them to do it at quite short notice. So my experience is that people will always work with you if you're nice to them in that process. And so be a good person to work with, because it will help others want to work with you, and you'll need it. So but definitely, again, just to be kind to yourself. It's a really difficult gig. It's a fabulously rewarding and fantastically fun job, for sure. But be kind to yourself in the process and to the teams that you're working with.
Yeah.
Oh, great, guys. Well, that is all the time that we have, but I really do hope the people that were tuning in were able to get some really good tips and hints off of that off of the past 45 minutes. I know it's been a pleasure speaking with the both of you, so thank you for being involved. Just looking through some of the comments, there's someone from Vienna, from Michigan, someone from the University of Bradford says hello. So quite a few people just kind of dropping a couple comments. So but no, I would like to, thank you, Amy Beth, and thank you, Emma Darwin, for being involved in the Forum Academy webinar. We are going to now move over to the breakout room, which is, don't click on it yet, everybody, but it's that little kind of door button on the left-hand side,
Cool.
which will take you out of this. And then if you just want to click on that breakout room there, you can have a conversation with AB and Emma.
Cool.
Great.
Thanks,
Okay.
Dan.
Thank you for
Thanks, guys.